Fred Brander was class of '72, and ends up doing wonderful things with his chemistry background here as head of the Brander wine. And I'll let Fred tell you about his life as a winemaker. Fred.
Thank you. And I apologize for the first slide. I thought whoever put it together did a poor job in the definition. But anyway, first of all, I want to thank the college for this amazing distinction and for the opportunity to come down and talk to you and share my experiences in the wine business to my fellow alums. Anyway, it's been a really amazing journey for me since I left Harvey Mudd. But I must say, I'm currently now the owner and general manager. That's my position at the winery and vineyard. And I do have a winemaker. I sort of retired as winemaker about 2 or 3 years ago, just to devote more time to just the general management of the business. And the Brander Vineyard, for those of you who don't know, it's a small winery and vineyard. We have about maybe 16,000 cases in production and about 42 acres in vineyard. And so we buy about half the grapes and produce and then grow half. And that's in the Santa Ynez Valley, which is just outside the town of Los Olivos in Santa Barbara County. So I have to say that, my career in the wine business actually started almost 46 years ago. So actually I've been in the business longer than I've been an alumni. So, and the way that started is that I took a semester off between my junior and senior year so I could travel a little bit more and just kind of, check out the wine areas around the world. And I also started a wine importing business. So in the fall of '71, instead of joining my class of '72, I went to Spain, and the first slide actually was kind of was documented. My trip to Spain was documented in my senior page. And whoops, what happened? How do you go back here? See. There, okay. Anyway, that was my senior. Actually, I have 2 senior pages. So you saw the second one, but this is my real senior page. At least I think of it as my real senior page, and that's actually my first experience, my first harvest, so to speak, when I happened to be traveling in the south of Spain in the Jerez de la Frontera region where they make sherry. And I was just, a student just kind of thumbing his ride through southern Spain. And I was at this bodega of Sandeman, who makes sherry. And all of a sudden I see 2 busloads of American journalists, wine journalists, who were there to celebrate the vendimia, or the harvest. And so I kind of just, joined them and was treated to some pretty nice meals, and so it was a great experience. And then I met the man in the middle is Robert Balzer, who was an educator at UCLA, and I took his course. Now, actually, wasn't quite 21, but they let me, join the class anyway. But then. Yeah, so my next class picture or senior page, obviously, still has the theme of wine and my passion for wine. And this was actually made without Photoshop. This was, superimposed images, maybe crude, but it was effective. What's that? What's that? Yeah, actually, that picture I forget who took the picture, but that was in the swimming pool right here that no longer exists. Let's see. This one? Okay, there. Okay, so this is 1975. My parents had just purchased 40 acres, and this is prior to planting, you have to rip the soil, and you have to prepare it, for the vines. You basically take like a D8, and you go down 3 feet, and you rip and cross rip, and then get ready for planting. This was perhaps a little bit chronologically out of sequence, because that's me with my son, so maybe taken 20 years after, but it shows us planting the same way, basically measuring, and when you plant a vineyard, basically you make your grid lines, and you just use actually plastic knives. Very, very simple. And then, so what you do is you put your irrigation system in, and then put your stakes in. This is typical vineyard development, and then your end posts, and then your wires, and then you're ready to hang your drip tube, and you put your grow tube around your plant that you just planted, just to keep the rabbits or any squirrels from, and also it protects it protects it from the wind, and just creates a nice environment for the vines to grow. And maybe 2-3 months later, they start emerging, and they're almost at the first wire to train. This sort of goes back to our first sign 30 years ago. This is our current sign right now. This is the chateau. This is what houses our tasting room. And the chateau has gone through numerous transformations over the last, say, 30 years. That's a nice cold day in March of 1999. That's maybe 10 years ago, and then that's a picture that was taken yesterday. So there's a lot of history, and that's, I think, probably the greatest achievement is just to create a sense of place, not just where the vines grow and you're making wine, but just creating a place of hospitality, a place that people like to come and taste the product of this particular place. That's my father, one of the earlier harvests. We used to pick in very big bins, about a ton apiece, and you can see the vines were really very bushy at that time. We planted the vines on own-rooted. There was no control of vigor. It didn't necessarily make for the best wine because there was not enough sunlight penetration. So in this case, it was Cabernet, and the Cabernet was pretty vegetal. And like for those of you who tasted our 2016 Cabernet barrel samples, so much has changed because we're now growing on rootstock, which devigorizes the wine and just totally creates a different grape altogether. So these are more harvest shots. This is probably my second harvest. We're using a basket press that you could barely put in maybe half a ton to 3/4 of a ton. And that's my dad and I. And actually, one year we did 150 tons that way. That meant filling and emptying this particular basket press 200 times. That's real backbreaking. My dad in his mule, my mother, my son, her first harvest. No, actually, he was born in December of 90, and this is 91. So he's probably 10 months. And this is a part of a vineyard we did as an experiment, really high density, very close spaced, and with the wires are very low to the ground. So the grapes, will ripen a little bit faster just because they get more reflective heat off the ground. But it's just perfect for him, just at eye level, And through the years I got recognition, especially for making Sauvignon Blanc. And I think one lesson I would give people is if you really should stay the course and always, don't just because you're not successful with one thing, you should go to another. In this case, I started with Sauvignon Blanc, and I still make Sauvignon Blanc as my main wine. And I think that's what's been part of the Brander brand success. When I was going to Davis, I met the wine purveyor to President Reagan, and he liked my wine so much that he ended up suggesting that it be served at the G7 here in Williamsburg, Virginia, and with Ronald Reagan presiding, and Mitterrand was there. So that was a kind of illustrious occasion. I was a good friend of Julia Child's and shared many meals with wine. This is a particular meal at a restaurant in Santa Barbara. And also our Sauvignon Blanc, not only did it get the first wine, the first gold medal of any Santa Barbara County wine at a major wine competition, the LA County Fair, but it's done really well in competitions. In this case, our vineyard grew the grapes that went into this wine. This is a sine qua non in 2004 late harvest Semillon. And that was not made by me, but at least my dad and I grew it, and that got the first 100-point recognition or 100-point mark given by Robert Parker. So, I developed a reputation for Sauvignon Blanc and Bordeaux wines. Sauvignon Blanc, see my dad, my mother, my son, and I. These are just vineyard shots, and but it all really goes down to having a really good crew. This is our crew from the 2016 harvest, and it's a lot of work at harvest, but it's it's lucky that we have our vineyards there. We don't have to go out. Some of my fellow winemakers, they'll buy grapes from 500 miles away, and they have to go and travel, and it's just that's a lot of work. I mean, I just rather just see my grapes right there, just at my winery doorsteps. Another thing that I've really gone into is art. And I have a museum called the Brander Museum of Folk Art. This is one of the galleries is actually inside the barrel room. And what I love about folk art from Mexico is that it's the closest thing to wine in terms of art, because there's a sense of place to Mexican folk art. If you really are knowledgeable about Mexican folk art, not only can you tell a piece where it comes from, but you can tell the artist, because there's this sense of community. I mean, the community is very, they just specialize in certain things, in certain styles. It's just like Burgundy will do Pinot Noir, Bordeaux will do Cabernet, and it's the same kind of thing in Mexico. It's not like everybody does everything, We did a Nacimientos exhibit last Christmas. Then another thing I've done over the last 40 years is petition the federal government and was able to get approved an American Viticultural Area, or AVA. So I submitted a petition about 4 or 5 years ago trying to get the Los Olivos district AVA, which is the area including that encompasses my vineyard and many vineyards. There's probably about 45 vineyards you can see. I don't know if you recognize any of the names, but there's say Sunstone, Gainey, Bridlewood, Beckman. Many of those vineyards are within the Los Olivos district, and I think this is a way to get more recognition, because wine is really a sense of place. It's not a beverage it's not like beer where you're getting your hops from New Zealand and your other ingredients from somewhere else and putting it together. The wine is really best when it really defines a sense of place. Last year, this whole year, we're celebrating our 40th harvest and bottling of the 40th harvest. Here is a Day of the Dead celebration. This is me. Yeah. It's funny because that particular issue, the Wine Spectator, came the same day as I had this idea of going into the tub, and some people then wrote, on Facebook and said, well, I'm just going to stick to Brander whites from now on. But anyway, and just to continue the celebration, I just got back last week from one of our first cruises to Cuba with our club members. So if any of you want to sign up for one of our wine cruises, we're going to Italy summer of 2018. And see, Brander on the ship, on the Regent, and sailing around Cuba. And then this is one of our distinguished dinners that we do with our club members. So it's been a long journey, but not really that long. I mean, I plan to continue this. I'm nowhere near retirement age. I plan to do this for at least 20 years. So thank you very much.